Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest Scratching the Surface episode where Alan and I talked all about the downsides of being hyperconscious. Today, we were lucky enough to sit down in person with Mr. Dave Meltzer.
Folks, thoughts become things. I set the intention to get Dave Meltzer as a mentor. I actually just met one of his real estate mentors, Brian Sidorsky. We're trying to get him on the podcast right now. But folks, that trip to Boston with Dave might be one of the most hyperconscious people we've ever met in our life. Not only does he have unbelievable external success, but he seems very fulfilled. The sign of a true master is that they make it look easy. Dave Meltzer is a true master.
Yeah, we talked a lot about emotional mastery and trying to control your emotions. He gave us a good example of waking up at 4:30 in the morning and walking outside and seeing that his daughter's car wasn't there.
Yeah.
And he initially, his first thought was to go to like anxiety or anger or
fear.
Where is she? Where is she? Now, he was able to level set himself, calm himself down, call her, and then figure out that she was at home and the reason why her car wasn't there. So it was a great episode. We were so lucky to be able to sit down with him in person, and we hope you will enjoy.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. No. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is shown.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. As we teased on our last episode, we have a very special in-person guest. We were lucky enough to do a remote interview with you a couple weeks ago, and then we were lucky enough to meet and chat with you for several hours in New Jersey. We were sitting down again with Mr. Dave Meltzer. How are you living?
I am living large, living live, and just so inspired to be here in Boston with you two guys who I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service and go the empty mile. And when people drive in to spend 3 hours with me with, really great questions, more interested than interesting, I said, these guys are now whatever they need. And I think it's a great lesson for people because not everybody's accessible and productive. But when you go the empty mile for someone else, they're always going to be available for you.
Well, we appreciate that. And I think one of the things that resonates for me with you is you just want to help. And I think that it's like, I want to be in your orbit because I want to be that. I want to help as many people as I can. And it motivates me when you say, how can I be of service?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot more than what people see at its surface, is that you can be of service and also create abundance, also be profitable. Of course, purposeful and passionate come along with being of service. That's the easy part. But where I think I distinguish myself is that although to the appearance of everyone else, all I'm doing is being of service, because I have a discreet and a confidence of the value that I'm providing and the faith that I have. It's a currency, my faith. Belief, focus, faith are all currencies, just like money. It's an energy that flows through a current. And so that currency to me is so important because although I almost feel hypocritical and a little bit mischievous because I'm of service, but I'm also calculating how can I provide value and also create value for myself.
Right.
And fill that void. And most people don't see what I do, but I have created an extraordinary amount of abundance and wealth by just being of service. People are like, what do you do? And I have learned by being of service and providing value to allow more value to come to me. And you would not believe the deal flow, the business development, the opportunities that I get simply by being unconditional about my service. And I think you guys are living it here. That's why I'm here, right? If you don't do those types of things, you're not going to get the relationship capital, the situational knowledge in order to monetize in that currency money what you're doing.
That means the world to us, because we actually did an episode recently on the downsides of being hyper conscious, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but when you are hyper aware, and our goal is to get to the level that you are, I feel like you're very, very well balanced. But when you're so aware, you see things that a lot of other people don't, and the problem with that is I don't always feel understood, and that's something that I'm trying to figure out. How to? Is that something you can help with?
So it's interesting because I call it a layering. What happens as we become hyper-conscious, we're accessing not only the conscious think, say, and do, but also the subconscious believe, and then the unconscious competency of genetics and energetics. And what happens is that we're taking highly complex things and making them simple. The difficulty that we have in communication or connection is that if we take highly complex things and make them simple, there's a lot of layering that goes into it. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I studied existentialism, Kierkegaard, etc. And they taught me these two words. The two words were, I am. Mm. Now, I thought it was horse shit when my teacher is telling me these are the two most powerful words in the world with the most meaning of any two words, and it's only three letters combined. And I'm trying to figure it out in my head, and I'm kind of lying in normal manipulation of, of course, I am. I get it. I am this. No idea how many layers existed as I got to be my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and even now in my 50s that I truly... And I'm still on the journey of figuring out I am, but I am means 100 times more than it did when I was 17 years old and first was exposed to it. The difficulty, just real quick, I know you're about to save that question, but here's what really messes me up, is I can get to a meetup, like you guys came, there's 25 people that stay 3 hours with me answering, so I can answer questions and hopefully heighten their hyper-awareness. But I lose track of the layers. And that's when you're a mass... Right. When you have the mass audience, this is how you can be disconnected. I'm sitting there with one woman, and I just mentioned something that's a layer that I've learned years and years ago that's a basic to me, which was the ego isn't just arrogance. Now, I would actually say most people don't, when they think of ego, they just think of arrogance, superiority. Yep. Right? Me, it's the need to be right, offended, separate, inferior, superior, guilty, all angry, all frustrated, all these different things. I've lost track sometimes. So here's the interesting thing. Your name, the Hyperconscious Podcast, you actually, beyond being hyperconscious, you now have to be hyperconscious about being hyperconscious.
Right. So he just kind of described, the 4 levels of mastery. We've talked about this before, Kevin. You've got unconscious incompetence. You've got unconscious competence. Then you've got conscious competence. And then you've got unconscious competence. And the 4th level of mastery is sort of like Michael Jordan trying to teach someone how to play basketball. He's been on the court so many times for so long where he forgets the layers of someone who's a beginner. And so it is difficult as a personal trainer. It's difficult for me to train beginners because I forget why I do what I do because it's become an unconscious competency as you refer to it, or maybe a part of the subconscious. One thing that I wanted to ask you mentioned the empty mile. So I'm very big on going the extra mile for others, and that's something you so much do, more so than almost anyone I've ever met. Like, I called you the other day. You called me back within like 10 minutes, and I really appreciate that. I know you're busier than I am.
I'm accessible.
Right, unbelievably
busy
accessible.
Busy is a misnomer, right? So
right.
People that are busy sleep a lot. People don't get that. But if you're unavailable, not accessible, you're busy. Right? If the line's busy, you can't get through. So I'm actually, I have no need to be offended. But if I did, I'd be offended by someone calling me busy because I pride myself on being productive and accessible.
Okay. Interesting.
Right? And I prove it by taking action, and I do things now. I'm a student of my calendar. So very rarely will you ever hear or meet anyone say, David Meltzer never got back to me.
Interesting.
Have you guys ever heard of someone tell you that? Because I'd like to know their name and apologize.
How do you manage all of that? with such a crazy schedule.
Yeah, you got to understand time. Most people, they create resistance with time, and I know time's an infinitum. I know that my entire life is just a blink of geologic time, and that 10 years is just a blink, and 1 year is just a blink, and that I give meaning to everything I see, especially time. So instead of creating resistance with man-made construct of time that I don't have enough of it, I'm the opposite. I have more than enough time. So just like we were talking about earlier, I get to do this. I don't got to do it. I don't have to do anything. And you can convince yourself and shift your energy. I do the same thing with time. So if you live in a world where there's enough time for everything, then you make the time to do it because you start, it's all an impression. How many times you get something and you say, I don't have time to do that? And you actually did. You know, somebody described to me today that, you know, the guy took 15, I know we were talking about the expertise with one of the PR people way up in the NFL and how with athletes, the athletes will resist him for like 15 minutes to do a 5-minute interview. And he's sitting there going, if you just would have taken the 5 minutes to do the interview, number one, you'd have felt good about it. And two, you would have saved 10 minutes.
Interesting.
So I see your call and I have a system. Can I do it now? No. Right?
Okay.
I was in the middle. Like if someone's calling me right now, I
Right.
can't answer it. It's in my pocket. I
Right.
don't want to be distracted. But I'll tell you the first thing I'm going to do is go through and call every single person back that called me during this interview while I'm going to the next thing.
Wow.
And then I go and I'll prioritize it by included on that list always will be because I got to spend 30 minutes with my wife every day.
Right.
I know I'm going to check in with my wife again for 5 more minutes, right? Which will put me already at 20 minutes on the day. But I'm very time oriented. I have enough time for everything and everyone. And when you do that, yeah, some nights like last night, I stayed up till 1 here, which is actually earlier going to bed than I normally do in California because it's 10 p.m., not 11 p.m.
Right.
But I was out of energy and I fell asleep several different times to get through the 220 emails that had aggregated because I went to dinner with the PR person, you know, from the Ravens and his wife. But I got to it. And it was like Justin, my camera guy over there, it's media president, really. But I sat there convincing myself every time I went to bed, you get to do this. You get to help all these people.
Right.
I had a guy one time that I was coaching said, I hate emails. I'm like, no, you don't. He said, yeah, I just hate them. I don't like doing them. I'm like, you don't hate them. I go, that's your problem. I said, here, I'll change it for you in 2 seconds. He's like, no way. I go, yeah, sure. I'll give you $1,000 for every email you receive and $5,000 for every one you send.
Interesting.
How do you feel about emails now?
I want more.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
Why can't we just do that automatically? See, I've taken all the phone calls like you. Most people are like, oh, this kid's bothering me, right? Kevin and those guys are calling me. That's not me, man.
Right.
I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, oh, shit. These guys want my opinion. They need my help. Nothing makes me feel better than helping someone. God, I'm so blessed. I got to get back to them. It's right here.
Yeah.
And when I called you, you felt my energy authentically.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
dude, thank you so much for calling me.
Right.
How can I be of service? I'm sure that's what I said.
Yeah, totally.
And then I helped you, and I
Yeah.
felt better about myself.
It's a win-win.
And so did Alan, because I remember Alan saying, yo, like, Dave just called me.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, and I think
Hey, wait, just so you know, because it doesn't stop. When I call Bob Proctor, when I call Gary Vee, when I call the guys that, you know, to me were mentors and that are now my friends the same way that we're friends.
Right.
You put them on a pedestal a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
not
yeah.
supposed to be separate, not supposed to be superior,
Right.
but everyone does it.
Yeah.
You know, we work at it. But I literally will look at my guys and be like, oh my God, and here's the funniest thing. The more successful the person is, the more they are my mentor. The Matt Higgins, like big dudes, right? Steve Wynn.
Yeah.
Invariably, unless they're traveling some international flight and can't call you back or an interview, they are easily the fastest guys to get back to me all the time.
No kidding.
Isn't that incredible?
Right.
Right? The biggest names.
Yeah.
And I'm like a little girl the same way. Like, oh my God, Bob Proctor. Every time Bob Proctor gets right back to me. But Bob Proctor's 84 years old.
Right.
So I'm 51.
Right.
So when
You
I
were
was in my
learning from
20s,
him.
that guy was in his 50s.
Yeah.
And he was a legend already.
Yeah. I was listening to a speech recently of him, Mindset. Albert Einstein was the thumbnail. That's why I clicked on it.
naturally.
But yeah, Bob, it's, if you could, when you mentioned the empty mile, what does that mean to you? Because I've heard the extra mile, but like the way you phrase things, I know there's deeper layers, and
Yeah.
I wanna go to those.
Dave, when you spin, can you just make sure, when you spin to face him, just make sure you stay up on the
Okay, yeah, sorry.
No
You
worries.
can hear it there. So the empty mile is something that I realized it goes with my pattern in life is that, people say I give 110% or full of it. You can't give. I'm a math guy, right? I beat people with math. So think about in terms of the extra mile compared to the empty mile. Yeah, you went the extra mile. So what? Right? It's an abundant union where you didn't cover all the miles. Right? The extra mile. So if you go out to jog 5 miles and you go ahead and your perception 5 miles was enough, I'm going to go 6.
Okay.
Right? That's the extra mile.
Right.
Most people won't, though. Most people won't. But guess what? People do. What if you pushed yourself to a point or increased your perspective to be in the empty mile where nobody else has been? It's empty there. So that's where the Bransons and the Bezos, right? That's where these guys are. When I talk about, I used to limit myself by saying I'm going to make $1 billion this year. And my wife, I'm like, yeah, I just stopped that. I'll go, that's such a limiting thing. I go, if Jeff Bezos made $1 billion a year, they'd fire him.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because he's on an empty mile. Nobody knows what that experience is like because he has taken his life in a lens of productivity and accessibility, take advantage of the technology and the math of the universe to live in an empty mile. Nobody else is there. To get there, you got to go a bunch of extra miles. You can't get to the empty mile. There's a saying, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
Right? And you're not going to get there overnight either. You can get to the extra mile overnight. Easily. You can get the extra mile in a day. You can't get to the empty mile. So I'm always looking and searching for the empty mile where nobody else has been.
So I feel like we met you at the elevator, we were riding up in the elevator, and you're saying, okay, I flew in, I did this, I met with this person, I met with this person, I met with this person, I'm here, after this, we have a meetup, and then I have this. And in my head, that is the most overwhelming thing ever because you're just doing so much. So when you're thinking of, and you said it was easy, you're like, yeah, it's easy. Have you locked in that this is how you get to the empty mile by just continuing to add value, add value, add value, add value? Somebody else would have stopped. Nope, keep going. Add value, add value. Is that the way that you motivate yourself to get through such a hectic schedule?
There's an important couple words that get me there. Number one, enjoyment. Right? It's what we were talking about earlier. You didn't want to go on the trip. You didn't want to go on the red eye. Had a big wedding on the weekend with all your friends. You're 30 years old. Your birthday's coming up next week. And you're like, Dave's making me go overnight flight. And then we got, basically 60 hours of straight work with 4 hours of sleep each night. Right? Or you could say, oh my God, I'm so blessed. Right? I'm going to meet all these people, do all these things, and convince yourself to do that. So the same thing in this layering for me, it's all up here of, first of all, I have enough time. It's infinite, right? And I'm going to be productive and accessible. The only difference is the first word is I have to enjoy it. So if I'm not in the right mindset of enjoyment, then you have the enjoyment of that consistent, persistent, right? Every day without quit. And here's the next special word, pursuit. Why is pursuit so important? Because I believe there is no pursuit of happiness. Right? I believe that in order to be happy, you constantly have to be pursuing something. When you're in pursuit, you're super happy.
Right.
We've all played sports. You work out. It's the pursuit of the workout that makes you so inspired.
Right.
Right? It's the pursuit of lifting more weight or being faster or stronger or more flexible or whatever it is. That pursuit, no matter what age you are or what those goals are, it's the actual pursuit of what? Of the third most important word. So enjoyment, pursuit, and potential. Potential is truth. Right? What if I'm always pursuing my truth, knowing that I'm not there? In fact, a lot of times that empty mile gets farther and farther away from the truth. You thought you were almost there, and it's like this really bad video game where they show you, or if you ever walk the strip in Las Vegas, you think you're almost, to Caesars halfway down the strip, and then, because it's so flat, you're like, wait a second. I swear it was just 3 blocks, and you're like 3 more miles to go, and you keep on walking, it gets farther away. Sometimes the truth is farther away, even though we keep on walking. So is the empty mile. But if you really think of things simply of what enjoyment means, what pursuit means, and what truth means, you can get a lot done in a day, and it will happen and go by in just a blink.
So we've done an episode. I think a lot of people say, I want to be happy. And there's that old thing of like, I think it was John Lennon, the teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be happy. And the teacher said, you didn't understand the assignment. And he said, you didn't understand life. I think that happiness is defined, unfortunately, without enough layers, as you would say. I think that happiness, I've tried to broke it down. I'm a math guy like you. I want formulas. So I think it's joy, happiness, and fulfillment. And I think they're three different facets of what we're defining as happy. So joy is when you're in process of doing something that you enjoy. Happiness, I think, is result reliant. If this happens, then I will be happy. In other words, a dopamine hit. I will feel pleasure because if this podcast goes well, then I will feel good. If it doesn't, then I won't. Fulfillment, I think, only comes when you grow and contribute. So when you say the constant pursuit of my potential, I kind of want to learn from you. What do you think of that framework as the new framework for happiness to teach people rather than, because a lot of people are chasing pleasure at the expense of long-term fulfillment because they think they want to be happy, but it wasn't defined well.
Well, I think you're really, really close in my opinion. I think joy is absolutely put into the purposeful context that you did. I just have a differing opinion of happiness, right? Happiness is the pursuit. It's not an attachment to anything.
Right. So it's not result reliant.
Not result reliant at all. Like people, in fact, there's an emptiness sometimes when we get the result. In fact, that's how I lost everything, is I had everything I ever wanted and I had no pursuit. And so the attachment to a result, like I'll be happy when I get married, when I have kids, when I make my first $1 million, is a very dangerous thing in my opinion. And I could be wrong. I'm wrong about 50% of the time. So I truly believe, though, for me, I want to stay in pursuit. I want to stay in that pursuit, and that what keeps me happy. Joy, absolutely, in the short term. But then that fulfillment comes with pursuit of doing the best that I could. Right. So when we aren't fulfilled, it's because we're not pursuing our truth. We're disappointing ourselves, right? We're not, there is an energetic field of, man, I could have done better. That's not fulfilling. You know, and so when we're fulfilled is when we're in the pursuit of it, even if we don't accomplish it, that pursuit can give us fulfillment, even if the result is different or opposite to that which we want.
Right.
And it's really challenging. Imagine working so hard and losing the Super Bowl, or I think the World Series is the worst one, or I think the Olympics is the worst one. You look at speed skating is the worst. You could work your entire life, not just 4 years, your entire life, and literally here's Dave Meltzer's size is the difference between first and 12th place. Right, I would have a huge advantage being a speed skater. The way that Apollo Ono defined it to me, which I loved, was here's how it works, Dave: first, second, third. Imagine your whole life could be a 0.001 of a second being a math person.
Right.
Now, where does the fulfillment come? I knew a guy, John Coyle, who got third place in the Olympics by a nose hair and quit skating, because he couldn't find the fulfillment in what he had accomplished. For me, that mindset of I'm the third best in the world. I'm the best in San Diego. That's a potential. In fact, I think I told you guys this before. Most people ask me, what's the closest that I've come to my potential? And I believe that playing college football for me, considering the skills, knowledge, and my desire, to me was the most that I've accomplished, the closest to my potential that I had, right? Being who I was, it's just so far. And I wish that in business that I could be as close to the potential of my true potential, because I have so much potential in business.
Right.
I have I'm the Michael Jordan. I got shots, whatever, but I'm not living.
So what's the bottleneck? Is it the unconscious competency? Ego. Okay.
Yeah, so think about currency in its form. So energy flows. And so what stops two things? There's two things that will create the flow. One is what comes and I allow to come to me. And then two, what I allow to come through me for others. Both of these here are the places that something can bottleneck, right? Energy can bottleneck. And that's true about money. It's true about belief. It's true about focus. It's true about faith.
Right.
So inspiration, right, comes right through me to you guys. What's the only thing that creates resistance there? What energy works against it? What's the polar opposite?
Fear.
It's fear-based. Fear of loss. It's the ego.
Right.
All the separate. And you think about it in terms of separation. What would stop the flow? A separation of the flow.
Right.
right? So that separation is the ego and all these fear things. So I'm very conscious. In fact, I am hyper conscious about the ego, and the ego
And
always
there's our plug.
yeah, it always exists. Though the ego always exists. So you can't have an egoectomy. You can't remove the ego. So you only can raise your awareness or your hyper consciousness to wait a second. I'm acting, thinking, believing, or unconsciously being. Meaning personality trait, characteristic, obsession, or addiction, or maybe energetically I'm attracting with ego, a corrosive, a separation. It's slowing down. It's creating resistance to what I want. And you can pick out, and I like to be pragmatic about this, you can pick out things to explain this. So, a resistance is created. Think about mistakes, okay? Mistakes. How much time, energy, resources, and relationships all are critical to your happiness. Time, energy, resource, and relationships are all critical. How many have you created resistance with or for or ruined or wasted because of ego?
All of them, probably.
Yeah, like think about if I could recapture that much, even in today when I'm a hyper-conscious person and continuing on the pursuit of being more hyper-conscious, I can, it's, in California, it's only, not even 11 o'clock. And I can list out multiple times today that my ego has corroded my connection to that which inspires me or has corroded the connection to that which allowing me to inspire you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you are enjoying this episode where Alan and I are lucky enough to sit down with Mr. Dave Meltzer in person. We wanted to remind you that we have a bunch of free courses going up on the website at www.thehyperconsciouspodcast.com/free.
Folks, I often say this, that we've become more and more intellectually lazy as we want more and more instant gratification with technology, all that stuff. Put your phone away, sit down by your computer, and take this course. If you go to thehyperconsciouspodcast.com/free, there's 4 courses on there. One of them is the 7 questions to ask yourself to find your purpose. One is on calories and the importance of them. One is going to be 5 ways to build confidence with a little extra bonus.
Yes, from Alan.
From me, right? That's me. And then the last one is, what was the last one?
Effective communication.
Yeah, so that's the PMES system, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and how to communicate effectively in the way the other person communicates.
So the beautiful thing is, as Alan and I continue to learn and evolve, we can try to help you guys skip steps, and we can tell you about stuff that if we knew, it drastically would have changed our lives. So unfortunately, we can't go back, but fortunately, we can help you guys, and we hope you're able to avoid some steps that we tripped up on.
100%.
We hope you will enjoy those courses, and we're going to get back into the episode.
Yep.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
So your mission is to empower others to be happy. What's an example today where your ego got in the way? Because I don't think everyone understands ego to the extent you do. I certainly don't.
Yeah,
honest.
right. And I'm glad you guys tell me that because I really want people to understand that.
Right.
So where it gets into my way is that I have an interview with Pedro Martinez. Mm-hmm. So Pedro Martinez, I have created a feeling of superiority, that I'm inferior to Pedro. So instead of having the energy of my time's worth as much as Pedro Martinez's time, we're equals. We're connected, right? I created resistance and separation. Oh, I can't meet at this time. How about this time? And then we end up energetically, I end up putting pressure on the person who works for me, going, "No, you tell him this," right? But meanwhile, I'm afraid to tell him that.
Right.
So it's easier to use a third party to tell him that, hey, I'm busy. This is a top 5 business podcast. You should want, but it goes on and on and on. That's all ego.
Right.
Where if I truly work in ego and I truly work in inspiration, what I would do is call myself, right? And with radical humility, say, look, this is not necessary. I don't need Pedro Martinez for my podcast. I'd like to have him for these reasons. It would have this much impact on his charity, which is what he wants to promote. I have these capabilities.
Right.
Can you see any reason why we wouldn't want to do this? And I'm available at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock. Instead of mixing all my day up and changing everything around to accommodate someone as if they were superior to me, because I want another big name for my podcast, which is still ego.
Right.
I resonate so highly with that because I think I'm very humble, and Alan is really helped me realize that. But I think a lot of it is because sometimes I feel inferior. So it's easier for me just to say, you know what, I'll take a step back and be humble here. And we were talking the other day. We were talking for like 2 hours in his room before a podcast, so deep in fact that we didn't even podcast after because we burnt our brains out so much. That's an excuse.
Nice.
But,
Yeah, that get it.
but I guess I was saying, is it ever going to get to the point where I feel good enough? Like, am I ever going to feel good enough? And we were saying, when I'm at Dave's level, am I going to feel good enough, or is that going to be what motivates me to get better, to get better, to get better?
I think we all should pursue feeling better. Right? It's just like wealth. When you have a certain amount of wealth, then it's like, okay, I want more. There's more and more, right? And what we do with it is what's important. Where we go shopping with our currency is so important. With faith, with belief. Remember, those are all currencies that are shopping for something. And it's interesting because I think you nailed one of the best points that we can make is where is humility, right? Is it the inferiority? Yeah. Is it a subservience, a pleasing, a humble, passive humility? Or is it the exact opposite? Is it that I am so connected to that which inspires me, I'm so confident in what I do, that I need not separate myself? I need not. So when, you walk and somebody lies down a carpet because, right, you are the same, right? You're so connected, right? You refuse to walk on the carpet. You refuse. And the other side of it is you don't make or belittle yourself. What true humility is to allow someone who is full of light to liberate you, to let your light shine. And knowing under being humble that you can help them, be of service to them. And if it's not the right place, time, then so it is. In the humility, I think, is to allow things not to happen as much as you allow them to happen.
My goodness. I wanted to ask just a question from the standpoint of, okay, by all outside factors, anybody who looks at you would say you're a very successful person. And I think Alan and I have discussed this. You seem like you're very well balanced and you're not putting on a show. Everything that you do is real.
Right.
When it comes to fear, at this point in your life, what are you still afraid of, and how do you get out of your comfort zone?
Man, I'm still afraid of not being enough. I'm still afraid for the kids. And I tiptoe around this issue because I don't like to put out there anything. But there's an extraordinary responsibility when you have your own children, and then when also you're building a brand to empower children. And it's I'm afraid every time I'm human, right? I'm afraid that I'm going to be exposed as not enough, as a hypocrite, as a fraud, right? Because that's why so many times I like to illuminate the fact that I'm still on my pursuit. Right, because if I act with an ego and I want Pedro Martinez on my thing, or I buy something out of ego, right? I go shopping for something out of ego, which sometimes I do. I right now I'm in a good place, right? I'm driving a Volt and I stay at hotels just for the bed. I don't. For me, although you guys, this is the best podcast studio by Hilton ever. Right? I'm at the Springfield Suites, right? Because I literally have this ability to have that balance. But my biggest fears are that my pursuit isn't fast enough, isn't true enough, and that somehow, I'm not living in my truth. And moreover, it's not going to trickle down to the people that I mean most. There's a balance in my life, and I take overnight flights. And people ask, I want to write a book. I'm thinking about it. How do you have 200 nights on the road, yet still have more time with your family than anyone else? Because I think that's a gift that I do.
Right.
Because I can put my kids to bed and still get to LAX for an 11:40 flight, land, shower, and have a full day, fly back home and still see my son that next night.
Wow.
That's one night on the road. And I probably do that 50 nights a year where I'm leaving and coming right back. So there's 50 nights a year that are the same as anyone else staying late at the office. There's, once again, time, productivity, and accessibility.
Right.
But this balance, it wouldn't matter what I do. The reason people think I'm so balanced is because I'm living as close to that peace more time than most people are. When they see me, they see a whole bunch of chaos around me, but I have a majesty of calmness, right? I'm in a space of happiness. You guys have known me, watched my video. Very rarely am I in a place that I'm, angry, I'm depressed, I'm stressed. Because the minute I get to those places, I have hyper consciousness to go back to where I'm supposed to be.
How do you
That's a
do
great
that?
practice.
How do you get? Do you have a practical example?
Of course.
You always say meditation twice a day is better than an hour on Sunday.
Yeah.
I love that because consistency is my favorite thing in the whole world.
Let me share with you the story of how the mind works, and I've shared this once before, but a lot of people haven't heard it a lot because it was only one video that I did, but it was the best example of how this all works. So I wake up and meditate, and so I know where my point of reference for the day is. If I'm off of that point of reference, my baseline of peace, joy, happiness, your fulfillment, purpose, if I'm off of it, then I know to go back to center. So I go and I go outside after I meditate. I go outside. I'm gonna go to the gym, and I look and see that my 17-year-old daughter's car is not there. It's like 4:20 in the morning. It's Sunday morning. And immediately I go to ego. Great fear happens when you're a father, and that goes on. And what happened is, along with that fear now, I grab my phone and I am mad. Another ego emotion. I'm dialing. And as I'm dialing, I go back to center and ask myself, what's going on? Why are you angry? Well, you're not really angry. And I can hear the phone ringing, but I'm saying to myself in my head, you're not angry. You're not angry. What are you? You're afraid. Right? You're afraid something's happened to your daughter. So do not make this worse. So she answers, hello? Where are you? I'm in my bed. Oh, where's your car? Oh, kids were drinking, so I didn't want to have kids in my car drinking, so I Ubered with them home. It's at the shopping center. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for waking you, but I was scared because I didn't see your car. Oh, I'm sorry, Dad. All right, go back to sleep. Now, most parents, including me, before I learned how to go back to center, would have got afraid, got mad, called, yelled, not talked, yelled, where that? Then got mad at the action, even though they really didn't think it through, and been like, what do you mean you're grounded, you're the right? Projection, ego. And the worst thing would have happened, right? They would have taken a notch or corroded the connection between that which is most important to them, their child. All for the reason why, because they cared so much about their kid. And then they've created a correction or a separation, a corrosion between that relationship, because now the kid gets angry for the same reason, because they feel bad that they disappointed the most important person in their life, their parent. And it goes on and on and on.
Right.
I watched a speech of yours, and you said when we're energetically or emotionally connected to someone, it's a very cool thing, but it's also very dangerous. And we always say this, and this is something that I'm trying to own the shit out of. I'm trying to consciously, constantly own this. If something happens, I want to be able to accept that it's probably my fault. Because if I'm more aware, you're smiling. Is that a good smile or a bad smile?
Yeah, well, there's no fault, right? That's what I love about it.
Okay.
You're accountable, right? You've attracted it to your life, and you're supposed to learn something from it. There's no judgment or condition to it. We always put this good or a bad thing to it, so then it becomes fault-oriented, liability-oriented. Liability is a man-made construct, right? Judgment and conditions are man-made constructs. I use marijuana as my favorite example in recent times, because when I was a kid, you could go to jail for your entire life for smoking marijuana. If you get caught 3 times for holding a nickel bag of pot, which meant you spent $5, I guess, back then. I'm not a big marijuana guy, but I'm all for it.
Right.
You literally, if you were caught with marijuana, a little bag of $5 marijuana, you could go to jail for the rest of your life. 3-time loser law. Now, today,
right?
And
that's man-made.
You can bring it to school.
Right.
Right, you can buy it. What, it could live at your house, whatever.
Yeah, it's
so is it
you
good?
can grow
is
it.
it good or bad? And so, whose fault is it? You're in jail
Right.
all the time. Remember this when you think about liability, when you think about judgments and conditions, and those are morality. The subconscious and unconscious have no morality. The only place that morality exists, judgments and conditions exist, is in the conscious. What we think, what we say, and what we do. Right? In the subconscious and the unconscious, there's no morality. I can go through history and show you different times of morality and what is, and those are just man-made constructs that we are taking on the opinions or the judgments of other people, a collective normally that have voted, or a dictator that hasn't voted, of what that morality, what that judgment or condition should be, including the way we look.
Right.
Right? We actually have portrayed, look at art, women, what was sexy, in the 800s.
Right.
Is not sexy now.
Right. No. Right.
And I will tell you, some of the things that, the younger kids in their 20s think are sexy, I didn't think was sexy when I was 20.
Right.
Right. And they definitely don't think what I thought was cool was cool.
Yeah.
Just judgments and conditions. But I know that none of it exists on the subconscious or unconscious level. Therefore, I want to connect with people at that level.
I think emotional mastery is far more difficult when you care and when you care deeply. So, for example, I have someone I'll go to the gym with who is very near and dear to my heart. I dated her in high school. I dated her recently for a year and a half, and we still care about each other very much. We're close friends now. And I had a inopportune moment where I got frustrated with her, and she gets very upset when that happens. And what I said to her was this. I said, Jenny, if that was any other girl, I wouldn't have gotten upset. And I said, not everyone has the level of emotional mastery that you have. So my question for you is, for someone who has struggled in the past with being around and growing up around tempers when they were afraid, because I know they care, my family members I'm referring to, how did you get to the point where you got, we get good at the things we practice. You've obviously practiced controlling your temper. You've practiced emotional mastery. How do I get to that level? Is there any advice you have for someone trying to master their emotions to the level you just described with your daughter?
Yeah, hyperconsciousness. If we become hyperconscious or aware of when we get mad,
right,
and ask ourselves one simple question.
Why?
Right? The more we do that, right, and the more that we know where center is as well. So I think there's two components. You can't just know and be aware of when you're pissed. You got to also know where you want to be.
Right.
Because if you don't know where your balance in peace is, if my peace gets to a higher and higher awareness, a more higher and higher hyper consciousness, peace gets off balance real easily for me. So even though in other people's perspective, it's like, man, he's so mellow, I'm sitting here maybe questioning, why am I not? Why do I feel physiologically different? And meanwhile, instead of screaming, you're an effing blah, 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 in the old days like I used to be, I'm equally challenged because I actually, in my heart, feel fear, or, that I actually have my blood pressure rising, and I'll catch it because I've practiced so much.
Right.
Just like a professional golfer.
Yeah.
Right. I love watching professional golf because I love the guy. He's so disappointed because he left it on the wrong part of the green.
Yeah.
Right. Where meanwhile, when I play, if I'm 205 yards out, first of all, I'm breaking out a 3-wood, not a 9-iron.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if I hit the green, I'm like, yeah.
Right.
I don't even care what part of it.
Right.
Right. I'm on.
Yeah. If I'm not in the sand,
That's
I'm good.
where you get the same exact thing happens with your emotions, right? A lot of people, when you're younger, you're just glad to be on the green. Yeah. Dude, I didn't yell.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And meanwhile, I'm like, why did my heart beat 2 seconds faster now?
Interesting.
Because of that.
Because in that moment that I described, I felt very proud of my. Because in progress-wise,
Right.
I've made huge progress on my ability to control
Pursuing
my emotions.
your potential. You're closer to your potential.
How do you lock in with the forgiving yourself for the times when you did scream? Or you personally, you obviously talk about how you used to live in ego far more, and you had a temper too, especially results-oriented
mad,
people.
manipulation, fearful, anxious. I lived in ego so much more.
Right.
Look, forgiveness is the key to peace. It's the key to joy. It's the key. Forgiveness, to me, is happiness in some respects. Because think about this. If you're able to forgive, then there's two things that happen. You can allow your inspiration to come much more easier. You can be in the current and utilize your currency in a much faster and rapid and accurate way. But you also can, if you forgive, connect and clean the connection between you and everyone else. You can inspire them. You can forgive them. We get mad, we literally get mad or upset with people for doing the exact same thing that we do or
have
less,
done.
or
Right.
less.
Right.
All the time, every day. And that's, to me, the understanding of, God, what if I went right to understanding, right to forgiveness, and right to praying? And forgiveness comes with, if you forgive someone, you could pray for their happiness, which is the next step, right? You're putting faith, you're putting currency in somebody else of faith, of happiness. So let's say, somebody makes you in an ego state, whatever they did. Now, if you have to be around that person, or you want to be around that person,
Right.
you need to, number one, understand it, forgive it, and pray for their happiness. Where I've been telling people is you have to be hyper conscious about what you want around you, so don't feed out of the trash. If somebody bleeds you that you don't need to be around, or you
Right.
don't want to be around, then kill it. If it feeds you, feed it. Right? We don't feed it. As much as people know to get away from negative energy and all this, what I think a lot of times they don't understand is they're not feeding the people that feed them. Let me give you an example. My wife feeds me. Like, feeds my soul down deep, right? And I spent years, right, feeding people that bled me. So I'd sit at the dinner table with my 3 little daughters after a long day of letting the emotions run downhill, thinking to myself, I don't want to tell her anything. And then the phone would ring. Hi. Hey, Kevin and Alan, guys, how are you?
Right.
What can I do to help you? Blah, 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 right? Good guy. You guys appreciate me.
Right.
Right.
Then I sit down, and she looked at me and said, why do you treat people you hardly know better than you treat me? That's why. Because I didn't understand.
At the time when she said that, did you really hear it?
I didn't.
Because
All
I'm
this
guilty
comes
of that as well.
Yeah, and she would say, put away your phone, put away, it was constant, right? But I understand it now because I have hyperconsciousness, I raise my awareness, and I come and understand the layers of feed those who feed you.
Right.
Feed those that feed you is more important, I think, than kill the people that bleed you.
What's the barometer for you in the most practical way possible to know that someone feeds you? Because it isn't always conscious. Like, for example, there's someone in my life who I believe feeds my soul at the level you just described, but it's not proactively necessarily. It's just me being around her. So that doesn't make it any less or more than what it is. How do I...
There's a simple litmus test of how you feel. But we don't trust how we feel, right? In the Chinese culture, they call it the main Ming. It actually sits right below your navel. That's where the saying, think with your gut, gut feeling. That's truly where you see, where the third eye see from, where the awareness comes from. Because if you're in touch with how you feel when things happen, that's why people can pick this up and energy test it, right?
Right.
Because that's a feeling.
You mean with the shoulder?
Yeah, all
right.
types of body testing.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually use a conduit because I know that no matter in body testing, no matter what, my conscious, subconscious, and unconscious are in my way. So no matter how much I try to get out of my own way, there is some interference. But if you get somebody that's a conduit, somebody that is a medium or can channel, and then you get somebody that can body test you. So if you get a chiropractor that has experience with that, and then you have a third party that's a medium, he can ask you the questions while they're body testing you, or put things in your hand, or the power balance bracelets, or whatever they do energetically.
Right.
But I use a medium to test because there's no interference from me. They're just doing full channeling and medium, and they're like, oh, yeah, that makes you feel this way. Why do you feel that way? Was it at 20? Was it at 15? Was it at 5? Was it at 4? What happened at 4 years old? Oh, my mom dropped me on my head. Oh, that's why you're afraid of heights.
Right.
But this is true. So I try to lessen that resistance as well in my journey.
I set the intent. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I set the intention before this interview because you've sat down and interviewed some of the most successful people. You're in business with very successful people. Conor McGregor, one of my favorite fighters. I know you.
Looks like you.
Really? I'll take that. I know you interviewed Michael Chandler, who is next level. When Conor McGregor won his second belt, he said, I knew what it was going to feel like. I have felt this 1,000 times. I have woken up in the middle of the night and realized this. For you, where you are in your life now and where you're going in the future. Have you visualized that? Have you lived that? Or especially with the people that you spent time around, is that a constant? Like they visualize the level of success and the life they're living? Or have you been around people who kind of just like got there?
I think in some level they visualize it.
Okay.
Certain people, extraordinary people, feel it, see it, like the Bransons, the Wynns, the Warren Moons, the Chandlers. They do, and I'm one of them. I have three little mantras that I'll say when I'm setting my intent. Right? It's done, it's done, it's done. Because what I'm doing is acquiring the knowledge, acknowledging that it's already done. It's my job to allow it to happen. It's already done. It's my job to allow it to happen. You can't, you can believe what you want, but unless you see it from the main meaning, unless you see it, like, I told this story. Little kids are the best. You ask them draw a picture of what you want to be. And there'll be all types of different things that they want to be. You have Superman, you have Iron Man, you got a pig, but
Alan. Yeah, right.
If you can't see it, you're going to get a delivery boy, and you're like, what is this? That's all you can be if that's all you can see. And so when you see it, it's just acknowledgement, acquiring the knowledge that is there, and you need to allow it to happen. Please understand, acknowledge things and allow them to happen by seeing them in whatever way. And, it's that law of attraction only works. Now, remember, I can acquire the knowledge. I can acknowledge, $100 billion for myself, but I still have to take action.
Right. What does allow it mean? We're running on time here.
Yeah.
No worries. I want to make sure we respect your time. What does allow it mean?
And he knows I have 8,000 questions
I know.
to ask.
If I don't stop Alan, he'll just keep going. When you say allow it, what does that mean? How do you allow it to manifest itself?
Yeah, so most people understand intent. And athletes like yourselves understand intent, that I'm going to go work at it and make it happen. I actually have control. I disagree. I think, understanding these two connections that I'm trying to keep clean, right? That there's only one thing that stands in the way between me and that which already exists, myself. So I need to allow it to come to me by taking the appropriate action. To not let the action create resistance for it to be here, to not miscommunicate what I want. The universe, it doesn't know things. It's completely abundant. So if you're putting faith in what you don't want, all it hears is that's what you want.
How do you know when you're doing that? How do you know when you're putting faith in what you don't want? Because you're putting your attention on it?
Yeah, you're putting your attention, you're studying it, you're thinking about it, you're saying it, you're taking action to it, you might believe it. And the scarier part is sometimes, though, we unconsciously, through our genetics and personality traits, characteristics,
and
obsessions, and addictions, carry down from at least 4 generations, or if you believe in past lives, it could be 1,000 lifetimes ago. You just don't know. Right. So the only way to recognize unconscious competency of getting in your own way is patterns, right? So the patterns of putting faith in, pattern of, hey, why, if I don't want this, like, I don't want an abusive relationship. I don't want an emotionally abusive person in my life. Why do I keep attracting it? Because I'm thinking, saying, doing, and believing all the right things. I'm very disciplined about that. Now you know it's either your genetics or your energetics that's doing it, and you have to do work to practice on those to deactivate genetics that are causing it, activate new genetics, or energetically put out a different vibe that'll attract a different problem or person.
Genetics or energetics. So you've studied epigenetics and how we can change our DNA over time through our thoughts and actions and feelings, right? Okay, so everything we say, do, feel, all of that matters every second of every day, and neuroscience has proved that we can change our brain functionally, chemically, and structurally at every second of every day. This conversation is changing all of our lives now. So for people out there who have these unconscious competencies that you refer to that they're not aware of, once they become aware of them, how do they actually shift those?
I have many different methods. One is consistent behavior.
Right. That's my favorite one.
Right. So consistent behavior, cellular memory into the neural pathways, that 40,000 of the same thoughts are working for you, plus the 10,000 of the new data inputs caused by the 5 senses that we have in the conscious level. Right. I also have an exercise that's a little bit more woo-woo that takes care of the energetic side, which also will affect the epigenetic side as well, which is if something's bothering me, right, and it deals with light and vibration, if something's bothering me, I close my eyes and picture it. And I find a light in it. And I take that light and I cover it up in my mind's eye. I cover it up, and then in the same mind's eye, I think about the truth in my life, something I love the most.
Okay.
Like my wife or my kids or,
Oh,
the cheesecake, whatever. I'm not even a cheesecake
pet,
fan.
whatever.
Corned beef,
Right.
yeah. And so I'm a carnivore. Anyway, so I take the light in what bothers me the most, that I'm most afraid of, that makes me feel bad. And I go ahead and combine it now with and cover the light over what is true light, my truth, closest love, peace.
Right.
So in front of me now, I hold what bothers me the most and what I love the most in one big ball of light. Then I take that light in my mind's eye and I put it over me. So now I'm inside a ball with what bothers me the most, what I love the most, and me. And I hold it there, understanding and waiting for a shift to occur. A shift of my energy, of feeling that is different than the initial feeling of that bugs me. And different, maybe even and closer to, hopefully, this. Why would it be closer? Here's the interesting thing about light. One particle of light can change millions of particles of darkness. So I'm using light to cover up the darkness, combined with the extra surge of inspiration light, true light, which is even faster. And then when I use basically equilibrium to elevate the level of vibration or light within that which most bothers me, I put it into my own vibration, another form of cellular structure of subconscious and unconscious feeling. And I practice that every day. It took me 9 years, but I had one of my, good friends, neighbors get involved in a lawsuit with me, and I went through years of blame, shame, and justification, and I have fully forgiven him now, and I've even gone up to him and told him I think he thought I was going to hit him in the mouth. Thank you, right? Thank you so much, because I learned so much about myself, and he's accountable for what he did, but I'm accountable for everything that is in my life. And anyway, I was able, after 9 years of this exercise, and everyone's like, 9 years, Dave? I'm like, yeah, 9 years of something that would have ruined my life.
Right.
That would have stayed there for 90 years, moron.
Right.
It only took me 9 years. It's a blip of time. Man-made construct. Remember, I live in a different journey than most people. I can do so much more because it was only 9 years. But it took me 9 years. But in the first few years when I went on the journey, I would tell people, I'm so grateful that he did that. I'm so grateful I lost everything. So grateful that the moving trucks showed up and the sheriff and they took everything, and that he fraudulently signed papers to do that. I'm so glad that he did that. And I said it, and then I go home and I close my eyes and I dream about pulling off his fingernails and putting Tabasco on it. I'd wish upon him all types of diseases that were like Passover, man. It was the 12 plagues of Meltzer, right? Locusts. But I continued at it for 9 years until truly I'm at peace, and I was able to go up with him without any. I had one of my best, closest employees. He's like a son to me. He moved on. We outgrew him, and he's ready for another venture. But I was overwhelmed with emotion when I had to say goodbye to him. And I was trying to tell him without the emotions, hey, man, I just only want the best for you. I love you. And there's all these mixed emotions of betrayal and leaving and shortages, and also so proud. And
Right.
I was like, and I'm supposed to be a master of these things.
Right.
No, it took me a little while.
Yeah.
Luckily, those kind of things, they used to go on for months.
Right.
They're minutes now for me. Right. But
that's-
at the very time, I could feel it in my voice, and I'm like, my energy's not matching what I'm saying. You're
right.
sounding a little bitter, dude.
Yeah.
This is your boy, and you're like, I only want the best for you. And I'm like, I'm not believing it. But I shifted my energy and then prayed, understand what's going on, and happiness, and we just moved on.
Well, before we keep you here for months or
Which I'd love.
9
Sorry.
years. No, I honestly, I appreciate you spending this time with us so much. I just want to respect your time and make sure. I know you're, I was going to say busy, but I'm not going to say that because I know
Accessible
better.
and productive.
Yes. You're
Very
the most
active.
productive.
He is offended
Dave
now.
Meltzer is very active.
Very active.
Right? Remember, there's activity you get paid for, activity you don't. The one activity I suggest everybody spends more time understanding is sleep, because you do it every day, and it's the most powerful activity you do, because it really relates directly to hyper-consciousness, because your subconscious and unconscious are seriously in play when you sleep.
Absolutely.
So if you're not into that activity, get into that activity.
Well, we appreciate
Number one pillar.
Yeah, the number
of
one
the
pillar
5 fundamental pillars
natural
of
health.
natural fitness.
We appreciate you sitting down with us so much today. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before you head out of here?
I do. I have a new book coming out, not to promote it because I give my books and ship them, whatever.
Please do.
But it's, Game Time Decision Making. Sorry. July 15th. Luckily, it's not out till July 15th. You can pre-order it. But Game Time Decision Making. But it really talks about this type of thing that is not necessarily the decisions we make. It's really in the realm of what the assumptions we make and the causes we make that we then have a logical decision to make that is either in a judgment or condition aligned with what we want. And so I, really like that. The main message of the book, though, is always the one that I give, and it's I'm teaching people to be kind to their future self. And the simple truth is, we have all these layers, all these complexities. We got pretty deep today, guys. If you want to do something every day, it's really simple. Do good deeds. Be kind to your future self. Good deeds. Just put yourself into that productive, accessible. When somebody calls you, what's the good deed? Call him back.
Yeah.
What's the good deed? Wait a second and open the door. What's the good deed? Go out of your way to come to this best studio ever in Hilton to help guys out. Those are good deeds.
Yeah.
It's a really simple choice. Be kind to your future self. Do good deeds. Everything will come to you more rapidly and accurately. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I look forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. You have 2 copies of that new book sold already. If we could get them autographed, we'd appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Anything to end with, Alan?
I'm blown away. For all the listeners, follow Dave. I've learned so much from you. One of the things that I hope that people will say after I've served them and anything they learn from me, fitness or otherwise, I want to change their life in a positive way. And you've done that for me tremendously, and I know you've done that for all of our listeners.
Yes, and me as well. This has been an amazing experience. I was terrified, as I always am before this interview, but I think it went very well, and we appreciate you sitting down with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Meltzer.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode where Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down with Mr. Dave Meltzer in person. Up next, we have a very special Small Talks episode on the word reputation. So, behind the scenes, what you're doing on the day-to-day when nobody sees, that's you building your character. Now, if you have a strong character that you've built, your reputation almost doesn't matter. What your reputation is what other people see you as. But if you know your character is strong, that's what truly matters.
So I was reading a book recently by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he said that private victories must always precede public victories. If you're trying to look good in the moment in public rather than working on yourself in the background, it's going to become apparent because you cannot put on a show forever.
What Alan said. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you will enjoy that one as well.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.